Where was I born? I was born down on the Granby Road in the Kings Creek community. My first childhood memory that I can remember was when I was 3 years old. We moved from where I was raised at out to a bigger farm, and I was out there barefooted, and I stepped on a thorn and stuck it in my foot. And my uncle took a big old knife and helped me down and dug it out of my poor foot, and I cried and I cried and I cried. I think they spanked me a time or two because I was kicking and screaming, and that's as far back as I can remember a tragic event in my lifetime when I was a little boy. I was raised by my grandpa and my grandmother. How many siblings did I have? Well, I come from a small family. I had 7 brothers and 4 sisters. My house like when I was young. Well, I lived in a great old big 2-story farmhouse, and it was probably around, I would say around 100 years old when I was 3 years old. It had a big old front porch on it, a big old back porch on it, and set right in the middle of about 100-acre farm overlooking the creek.
Did it have electricity?
Yes, we were rich. We had electricity.
What was it like living with all of you in one house?
It's chaos, especially at supper time. It's even worse at bedtime. So you children are lucky. You got one boy and one girl in one bedroom. We had like 3 or 4 brothers in one bed. 3 lay across, and 1 or 2 lay across the foot of the bed. Depends on how big the brothers was, and that's where we slept. The girls the same way. 2 or 3 girls would sleep in one bed. The baby always slept with mom and daddy.
How did your family survive?
Very poorly. Our family survived. We raised most of our food on the farm. We always kept 2 or 3 cows, horses, chickens, raised 2 or 3 pigs to eat every year. And the rest of our meat, we either rabbit hunted or squirrel hunted or coon hunted and kept the meat and eat. And they worked in a furniture factory. Dad did. Mom stayed at home and took care of all of us children. Well, we celebrated all of our birthdays with a homemade cake. We celebrated Christmas just like they do now. Only difference was we didn't have all these toys and stuff. And when I was growing up, for Christmas, they'd buy us sometimes a bag of oranges. Once in a while, we'd have some leftover apples. As far as toys, we never got hardly any toys. Maybe 1 truck for 2 or 3 boys to play with. The girls might get 1 baby doll to share for 4 girls. And that's about what we had for Christmas, plus our Christmas dinner. It was always exciting. We'd go out there and pick out a big old rooster. We'd take that thing and catch him and chop his head off. And we'd either have baked chicken.
Did you like school?
Well, yes, I did. That was probably some of the first years was probably a little rough, but the last years, after I got about the 5th, 6th grade, I liked school.
What did you do in school?
Well, I can't tell you what I done in school, though you out of school. What did I do in school? What do you mean, what did I do?
What was your favorite thing to do in school?
Fight.
With who?
With the boys, over the girls.
Did you ever have a pet?
Yes.
What was your first pet?
My first pet was probably a dog or a cat. I had many dogs, many cats.
What was your favorite one?
My favorite pet was a little Chihuahua, which I bought when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I gave $10 for it, and I brought it home. And my uncle was over and he seen that little bitty Chihuahua puppy, and he said, I told him I'd give $10 for it. They always had the big old coon dogs that they'd pay hundreds of dollars for, and I told him I paid $10 for that little old dog, and he said, that dog ain't worth a penny. And so I named him Penny. And he lived till he was about 15 years old, till I got married, and he got run over and killed by a car. Believe it or not, that little dog was one of the best squirrel dogs that was ever around. He could kill a squirrel, he could kill a rabbit, and he was bigger than he was, but he knew how to kill them. He was a good squirrel dog. And he slept with me till I got married. He kept me company. Then he tried to bite my wife when we first got married on our wedding night. He didn't want to go to bed, get in our bed.
Did you ever have a favorite game or activity when you were young?
Well, yes, when I was growing up, what we done when we got all of us children together, we always played hide and seek. The boys and the girls on Sunday, we'd all get together, we played hide and seek. That was our game. And the boys, we pitched horseshoes in the yard, had a horseshoe thing. We had us a baseball field out there in the pasture where all the boys and girls would get out there, and all the cousins most time on Sundays, and we'd play ball out there. And then we get done playing ball, we'd wrestle. Then we get done wrestling in the office in the summertime, we'd all go down to the creek, we'd all go swimming in a big old creek.
What was your first job?
My first job was working at a service station.
What did you earn?
I made big money. I earned 50 cents a day, and I got one free meal, and I worked from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock of the evening for 50 cents a day.
When did you get the job?
When I was 15 years old. Or 14 years old, I'm sorry. I think I was 14 when I got that job. I was 14.
What are your hobbies and interests?
My hobbies and interests? Well, now or back then? When
Both.
I was both? Well, back when I was a little boy growing up, I loved to build model cars. Make model cars, build model cars, and fly model airplanes. I had built some model airplanes and flew some model airplanes. And then in March, our favorite little hobbies to do, we'd always build our own kite. We didn't buy a store-bought kite. We'd get an old bread bag, and we'd cut us out a kite out of that. We'd go out in the field and get us some weeds and tape that together and get a pair of socks or something like that to put the tail on it, and we'd make our own kites and fly our kites. And I love to bird hunt with a BB gun.
What do you do now?
For my hobbies?
Yeah.
Well, for my hobbies, I like to hunt and fish with my grandchildren. Tell you enough stories about hunting and fishing to last us for a week. My biggest fish that I ever caught was a trout, and I was going to have it mounted. And I called my buddy to tell him about this big old trout that I'd caught, which it was 14 and a half inches, and it was a native speckle, and it was at that time a North Carolina record fish. And he's going to come up and look at it, was going to take it and have it mounted, because I wanted to have this thing mounted. And while he was coming up to see me, my wife was in the kitchen frying fish. And the time he got there, I looked, and she had my big old trout already laying in the frying pan frying my big old trout, so I didn't get to mount it.
What was different about Caldwell County then?
Back then when I was growing up, we didn't have 321. To go into Hickory was a 2-lane road. Going to Blowing Rock, 321 was a 2-lane road. We didn't have the loop built out here around where we live now when I was growing up. And most of the country roads back then were all dirt roads. There wasn't many paved roads at all back in my younger days. I remember when they built 321 over here and 4-lane that road. I remember when they built that, 4-laned it. All down the loop out here to Southwest Boulevard. I remember when part of that was a dirt road and all that, and you couldn't get through in the wintertime. But I've seen a lot of changes built, 18 built over there for the mall and all that. I remember when that was a 2-lane road there, and this bowling alley was running there, and the Army was sitting there, and had the Kentwood Grill there, which was a big teenage hangout there on Friday and Saturday nights and Sunday nights for teenagers met from the schools and all that. And remember all those changes right in there.
Tell us about your furniture industry
My what?
adventures.
Furniture?
Yeah.
Well, I started in a furniture factory when I was 16 years of age. Started out working from another job I had, and the guy came and hired me. I was working at a grill, cooking, and he offered me $1.60 an hour when I turned 16. And I thought, man, that's a big raise. I'd got promoted from 50 cents from a curb hop to 50 cents on the hour. Got made me $1 an hour as a cook. And he offered me 60 more cents on the hour. And back then, that was a lot of money. So I quit my job, went to the furniture factory, worked there 2 weeks till I got my first paycheck. And when my boss man come by to pay me my first paycheck, He said, "Little one, how old are you?" And I said, "Well, I just had my birthday 2 weeks ago." He said, "I know." He said, "How old are you?" I said, "I just turned 16. Well, it was against the law for 16-year-old boys or girls back then to work around any type of machinery. So therefore, he said, "Little, I hate to tell you this, so I'm going to have to let you go. You're a good worker," but said, "You're too young." And anyway, we was walking through the plant, and he come by another supervisor and told him, he said, "I hate to have to let little one go back here, but said he ain't but 16. Do you have anything that a young boy can do, or, without being around machinery?" And he thought a minute. He said, "Yes, and I've got a job that I'll take this man off, and I'll see if he can do that job. If he has, I'll let him have it." So I started marking out patterns for a bandsaw. And I stayed in the furniture factory from the time I was 16 to up to, I don't know how many years, off and on, probably altogether in the furniture factory. I probably worked 30-some years. Went all the way from a little market boy all the way up to the highest plant manager over the years. But I had other jobs in between those times. I'd quit and go back and quit and go back. But I finally got out of the furniture business when they shut them all down here in the county.
What do you wish had stayed the same about the county?
What I wish had stayed the same about the county? Well, I wish they hadn't built the big super stores like the mall down here, Lenore Mall. I wish that hadn't been built. I wish they hadn't built Walmarts. And you say, well, why? Because when they built Walmarts, that shut our mall down. And then when they built Walmarts, that closed it in the mall, shut all of our stores down in our town. Our town used to have 4, 5, and 10 dime cent stores up there. Had all kinds of barbershops, had cafes and stuff to eat. Had a couple, well, matter of fact, it had 3 movie theaters up there in town where young folks could go, or moms and dads and family could go on the weekend to watch movies. And since they built all of that, everything moved away from town. And there's really not anything left much in our little town like it used to be. I mean, everything, some of the old buildings have been torn down because businesses moved out. But I wish it had stayed the same. Life was more simpler back then.
If you could change something in your life, what would it be?
If I could change something in my life, what would it be? Well, I tell you, the only thing I can think of, honestly and truly, that I would have changed and look back over the years now, I wished I had stayed in school and got a whole lot better education. It may have helped me out in jobs. This day and hour and time, you couldn't find a job, but back whenever I was going to school, the main thing in these furniture factories was, at dinner time, these here personnel men and women, they come around all the high schools and they passed out literature. When you get so old, come to Barnhart's, come to Broyhills, come to Kincaid's, come to Fairfield. And they weren't supposed to, but they encouraged us young men, young boys, 16-year-old, they kind of encouraged us that they always fixed that, if you quit school, come see us, we will give you a job. Well, back then, families didn't have no money. I mean, Dad brought home in a good week, about $50. And that was for the whole family. That's what they made. That was the average salary, about $50 a week, some of them $40. And, you get a job, that helped out the family. So young boys didn't have money like they do now. We didn't get allowances. And so you get to thinking, man, I can make $50 a week. So that encouraged a lot of people, well, we'll quit school and we'll start to work. And that way we can get us a car. That's our big dream. Teenagers got to have that first car, got to have a driving license. So therefore, probably, I would say in my age group, probably 75 to 80%, if not more, all boys quit school at the age of 16 and started to work. And that's one thing I wish all of us had stayed in school. It may have helped us in our future jobs, but it didn't hurt me because I was blessed and lucky because I was skillful in learning and all of that, and developed a lot of skills. So therefore, my skills in labor and building materials and things and stuff like that helped me. But I was one of the lucky ones. Most of them did not ever get moved up in life. They stayed at a low-paying job all their life. But if it had an education, they may have got a better paying job.
What was your first car?
My first car, I'm glad you asked that. I'm a Chevrolet man. I always have. I'm a die-hard Chevrolet man. And when I kick the bucket, they can put me in my Chevrolet, put me on my boat, and give me a Viking funeral. My first car was a 1964 Chevelle. I bought it when I was 15 and a half years old. I bought it out here when I went, the first day I went down to get my driving permit. My mama took me down there. I got my driving permit, and I'd always worked and saved my money on a farm. And I had enough money. I stopped at C&M Motors, which was up here in Whitnall at that time. Walked in that car lot, me and my mother. I walked around. I told that salesman, I picked out that pretty burgundy Chevelle. I said, I want to buy that car. And I think that that time the car was priced at somewhere around $2,500. The car just had a few miles on it. It was about a year old. And that guy looked at me and the youngin'. He said, well, I tried to trade. See, I was a farmer. I just traded all my life and stuff. And so I made that guy an offer on that car. And I said, I'll tell you what I'll do, sir. I'll give you $1,000 cash money for that car, and I'll take it home today. And the guy told me, he said, well, son, if you had $1,000, I'd sell you that car. And I said, well, I will be back in a few minutes with the money. So I went home, got my grandma, and me and my mama went to the bank because they had to sign my money out of the bank because I wasn't but 15 and a half years old. So me and my mother and my grandmother went to the bank, went in there, and I took my bank book, and they give me $1,000 cash money. And I go back to the car lot. And that guy said, you come back again? I said, yes, sir. I said, I come to get my car. And I had the money. I had 10 $100 bills, what I had. Guy said, we can't take that for that car, sir. And anyway, I got mad, and make a long story short, my mother knew the guy that owned the car lot, so she went in there and raised a little cane with him, and he come back out there and he jumped on that salesman and said, did you promise that young in that car for $1,000? He said, yes, I told him that, but I didn't think he had the money. He said, well, you do know you got to sell that car to him because he's got the cash, and you told him that, and you'll have to make up the difference. So I bought the car for $1,000, and the man had to put a tag on it, drove me home in my car, and that was my first car.
What decade in your life was the most difficult?
What decade in my life was the most difficult? Well, it would have been when I got married. That was the most difficult years. Got married when I was 17 years old. We had our first child about a year and 3 months later. And the first decade was trying to raise a family back then. That was the most difficult time, trying to raise my two children and work and buy a house and pay for cars and buy groceries and all of that. And that was difficult times because back then you didn't make much money. And money didn't go no further back then than it did today. And it was hard for a man to make a living.
What was the most successful moment in your life?
Well, that would be hard to say. I have had a lot of successful moments in my life. A lot of successful things. I mean, I've had success in several different types of business. I done well at one time in a service station. That was a successful time in my life. Had a pretty good job. I had a body shop at one time, which I enjoyed. That was successful in life. Had a furniture store there at one time. That was successful in life. And it's been blessed. Always all my life. Everything I've done, I've been successful in. I've always made a pretty decent living. And so I've had good success as far as business-wise.
What have you enjoyed? What invention have you enjoyed most during your life?
Well, besides the automobile, I remember when Henry Ford, was talking about building the first car. Me and my grandpa was sitting there and told him it wouldn't work. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. The most invention that in my generation that we enjoyed the most, modern thing, was a black and white television. I mean, that was something back in my days when we were growing up. Very few homes around in our community didn't even have electricity, and we had a TV, and that was a wonderful invention in our time. And that's something new. I mean, no black and white TV. I mean, you couldn't half tell what the people looked like. But now that was something to have, something that would talk to you, something you could watch a Western or a movie in black and white. That was good. And I guess the other invention we enjoyed there, modern at that time, was a telephone. I mean, we enjoyed having a telephone. Back then, it wasn't like today's telephones, but You couldn't get a private line. Most of them were 8-party lines in the same community. You had 8 families on the same phone, and that was nice. You had a telephone. I mean, didn't have private lines and all that. We didn't have cell phones and all that, but that was a wonderful invention to have. Was the TV. I mean, that was our enjoyment, and to have the telephone. I mean, that was something to be able to call, and talk to people. That was one of the two best inventions years ago that they had.
Have you accomplished what you wanted to in your life?
I would say so. I've had most of everything I'd say I've accomplished about what I felt like I would in life.
What advice would you give to my generation today?
To your generation today? Well, I'm going to give you the best advice you'll ever hear. First thing your generation needs to do is to start going to church and get saved. And then the next thing your generation needs to do, and it's very critical that you just do this if you ever make it in this old world, because it has changed. You need a good education. I mean, you need technology. That's my generation, so they don't know much about technology. I can use a computer very little. We never had computers just a few years ago, even in our home. But the job force nowadays is not like it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, it was manual labor. I mean, that's what it was. It was working in furniture factories. The women went to the cotton mills or hosiery mills. That's more or less where the women worked. I mean, it was manual type labor. Today's market and jobs, it's all electronic. It's all got to do with something, computers, machines, robots that took over the jobs that people like my age done. And without a good education in technology and computers and computer science and stuff like that, this younger generation is going to have a hard time of even making a living to even survive the way the world has changed. And that's facts. I mean, it's all about computers and education. If you don't have it, ain't nobody going to hire you. Even now with a college education. These people out here with a college education can't even find jobs. People out here that's got real good education can't even get a job making half what I make. I mean, it's just you got to get the right kind of education and the right thing that's going on out here today, because I mean there's not that much choice like it used to be. Used to, you could quit a job today, walk down the street to the next shop, you could get a job, you could go to work, you could work there 2 hours, get mad, quit, walk down to the next place, tell them what you could do, they put you right to work. This day and hour and time now, even with a college education, it takes a long time to find jobs. There are just not that many jobs out there like it used to be. But education and getting right with the good Lord above, that's the two main things that just change this world.
What thoughts do you have on today's economy?
Today's economy is one of the worst messes I have ever seen in my entire life. The economy is in shambles. Everything out here is, the prices keeps going up, taxes keeps going up, wages are not going up to match it, and they keep borrowing and borrowing money to fix this, and the more money they borrow, the worse our economy gets, and it's just, our economy is in shambles, and the money that they've borrowed to pay the Social Security, the welfare checks, the unemployment checks, and all of that, the money was took out of my check for my old age, my retirement money, which I would have had to supplement to help me along in life. They've done spent that, borrowed money on that, and the sad thing about it is that you all in your generation and your children and your grandchildren will still be working and trying to pay back the money that our government has foolishly spent. And that's why our economy is in such a mess, and it's all about the rich folks are getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Just like on our energy things, our gas and our oil. I mean, that's they're getting billions and billions of dollars in profit, which they don't need that. And I think the government, if we had a good, honest government, there would do some kind of a stop on some kind of a ceiling price on stuff that we have to have, like food, our taxes on our food, our taxes on our fuel, and all of that. All these things need to be taken into consideration on how much money that the oil companies and everything's making. The farmer gets nothing, and the middleman don't get much, and the ones that sells it, they make all the money or a percentage of the money, and everything is just too high. People can't afford to keep going like we are with our economy and keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing money and spending money off the countries like China, borrowing billions and billions of dollars off of them. And how are we ever going to pay that back? We can't. And all of our businesses now around are owned by foreign countries, foreigners. You look at our business today. Look who owns your gas station. I mean, I go up north all the time. You don't find many American people that owns businesses. I mean, we're working for some other country right now, and I don't think that's right. And I'm saying that, in truthfulness. I mean, American people can't. You folks, your generation can't go out here and start up a business because you can't get the money. But you can let these foreigners from some other country come in here. They don't have to pay no taxes, and they can borrow money from our government to start a business up, and they don't have to pay nothing back and get grants. And our people in America, you all want to go out and start a business, you can't borrow the money. You're Americans, but yet you can't borrow the money. But some of these other countries come in here and get all these grants, get all this free money, blah, blah, this, and start up a business with nothing. And the American people can't do it. And, that's killing our American economy and everything else on the way that business works today. That's our crooked government. That's what I call it. Politics.
Did your family have any stories that they used to tell?
Well, back when I was growing up, my grandpa used to tell a story. And I never knowed my grandpa would ever tell a story that probably wasn't pretty well truthful, or he thought it was the truth. Down there where I was born on Kings Creek on the Grandin Road, I can't think of the name of that spring down there, but there's a spring down on the Grandin Road. I know where the spring's at. And anyway, they used to say that spring was haunted. And back years ago, there's some fellers, I think this is the right way the story went, they got down there anyway. Somehow or another, they got in a fight, and one of them cut the other's head plumb off. And he died there at this spring. And they used to say that the tale was on certain nights, certain times of the year, they rode the horses up through there, and they was be like a man or a ghost would ride a horse up there and scare them to death. And I know my grandmother told me he come in from logging with his team of horses one night, and he seen that thing, or thought he did, there at that spring, and they said he liked to beat his horses to death and run them to death, and that's probably a couple, 3 miles from where that spring was at to his house, but they said it scared him to death. But I know this for a fact, and I went down there back when I was young to where the thing was at, and me and one of my uncles, and I forget the name of that spring, Josh Spring, that's the name of it. Josh Spring is the name of the spring, I never think of it. But anytime you can ever go there, when the leaves is on the trees, there's some big poplar trees above that spring, and about every time you go down there, you'll always see a breeze, and them leaves are always moving in the top of that tree. And that's where that's at. Josh Springs is the name of it. But now, whether that's a true story or not, or a figment of imagination, but I was told that for a true story.
Where did you go to school at?
Well, I went to school at Gamewell. Later on, it became Gamewell Collinsville when they built the new high school, and that's when they brought Collinsville High School down to Gamewell and closed the Collinsville High School. Just made a grammar grade out of it. Brought all the high school students down to Gamewell when they built our new high schools, which is out there, which is a grammar grade school now. But Gamewell and Collinsville, that was our high school before they built West years later.
Was there any type of segregation in it?
Well, what kind of segregation? Well, yes. I remember I was in about the, I'm going to say either the 6th or 7th grade. I'm not exactly 100% sure. And that's when they segregated our schools. They brought the colored folks out to Gamewell from the Dooleytown section out here. They brought half of those from the Dooleytown Road. Half of them came to Gamewell. The other half up there where the highway divided the colored town went to Hudson, and they brought part of them over at Harper Creek. Part of them came to Gamewell and Hoods Creek. Part of them came to Gamewell, and part of those went to Lenore. And that was back when I was in, I think it was the 7th grade. I'm pretty sure it was 7th grade. It may have been. I'm pretty sure it was 7th grade. And that's when they segregated our schools and brought them out there. They divided up, shut down all the nice colored schools which they had at that time. nicer schools. Some of them were nicer and newer schools than what we went to. And I never could understand why that they brought the colored folks, children, shut them schools down and brought them to our schools, and didn't take leave their schools open and desegregate that way and take some of the white children or whatever from that community and put in the nice schools instead of just shutting down the schools. I mean, look back at the day, I think that was rather kind of a stupid move of the state and the county to close down a real nice school with nice basketball gyms, basketball courts, and football fields and things, and close them down and bring them to a school which some of them didn't have all that nice facilities there. They were older model schools.
Was there ever any hope at college?
When I was growing up, no sir. College was the last thing on any of our minds. They were, during my high school years, I only know of maybe one or two boys that ever got to go to college, and maybe one or two girls that in our school that ever got to go to college. One reason was it wasn't because the boys wasn't smart. It wasn't because the girls wasn't smart, because we had some real smart girls in our school. But the thing is back then, moms and daddies didn't have the money to send children to school, and that's why a lot of them got scholarships for ball and making good grades. They won scholarships and all, but moms and daddies could not afford to pay the money for the rest of the tuition and stuff. So therefore, college was literally almost out of the question.
Where did you and your wife meet?
Where did we meet? We met at school. She moved from Hudson and came to Gamble School for a few years, and I met her there. And then they moved off again. And then later on, when I was in high school, I met her again up on Wilson's Creek. I've been up there swimming, and I was coming back down through there and run into her and her family, and that's where I reunited with her at. And not long after that, I think she called me and was talking to me, and I asked her out on a date, and we started dating, and we wound up getting married.
How long have you been married?
I have been married 44 years.
What's the secret behind it?
The secret to a long marriage is make sure that you're in love with the person that you marry. Make sure it's not lust. Make sure it is true love, and true love will last a lifetime.
How many kids did you have?
Well, I hate to hurt your feelings, but I didn't have any. My wife had 2 girls, but I didn't have any.
What was your wedding like?
Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. My wedding. Well, me and my wife had been dating, and I got this foolish notion that I wanted to get married. And so I went and told my grandmother, hadn't told my mama yet, or her mama or daddy, that we were thinking about getting married. So I went and told my grandmother I was thinking about getting married. And so me and my grandmother, she had to go to town on Saturday when the town Lenore was like it used to be. That's where everybody went to town. And while she was getting groceries, I walked down to this little jewelry store by the name of Tuttle's Jewelry Store, and I was looking at the engagement rings in there. And anyway, they had a little diamond ring there, which was very expensive back in the day. And it was $125. I'll never forget that, because it was a nice engagement ring. And so I looked at that, finally went home, come back, got Grandma went back up there. I thought I was going to buy that ring, so I got that engagement ring, and I took it and gave it to my girlfriend after she'd married, put that ring on her finger, and she accepted and all that. And then when we decided to get married, it was one of them, I guess you call it elope or spree of the moment thing. She was at school, I was at work, and I got to thinking I ought to get married. And so I called her and got her to the office at school and told her I wanted to get married that day. See, we were young and dumb. I didn't know that you had to have all this stuff anyway. We get off to school. I had to go down there to hunt my mother. Walked about a mile up through the woods to where she lived. Got my mother, come back. Had to go get my wife's mother and get them to sign anyway. We get married. I had tore my shirt about half off at work. And while we were going out to the chapel where we got married, out here at Clark's Chapel Baptist Church Parsonage, I used to smoke. And back then, girls wore short skirts and pantyhose, and I was a smoking, and my ashes fell on her pantyhose, and they run from her ankles plumb up, and they just disintegrated. But anyway, that's what she looked like when we got married. But we got married, had our ceremony there. The preacher asked me if I was sure we wanted to do that, because he knew me, and making sure, he thought maybe, well, we had to get married. He said, are you sure you got to do this? Are you in trouble? So therefore, the preacher was asking me if my wife was pregnant. And, I told him no, it wasn't one of them our cases. My wife was not pregnant and all that. Anyhow, he married us, and at the end of the service, my mother asked me, said, you need to pay the preacher. And I said, what for? She said, well, you're supposed to pay the preacher for doing the ceremony. Well, I didn't have $1 in my pocket the day I got married. I borrowed $5 off of my mother and gave it to the preacher. And I've been married 44 years, and I still owe my mama that $5, and I'm never going to pay her back. And
did you have a honeymoon?
well, let me tell you about my honeymoon. Newlyweds, take mama home, take my mother-in-law home, and we were, I guess, didn't even think about where we're going to live. We ain't got no house. We ain't got no apartment. And we're married. And I was kind of scared to tell my wife's daddy, because he drove a truck and he didn't know we was planning on getting married. As a matter of fact, I don't think I'd ever met him, but maybe one time. And now I have married his daughter. And anyway, we go back to my grandma's, and we were going to stay there. That was fine with grandma. Well, anyway, we decided we'd go down. Her daddy was coming in on a truck. And I decided I might as well go meet my daddy-in-law, And so we take off down to Hickory, and we get down there, and he hadn't got in with his truck. Well, I'm scared to meet him, because I'm thinking he might beat my hind end. I have stole his baby girl. But anyhow, while we were there, my wife's brother had a paper route. The little boy is probably 10, 11 years old, and it started pouring to rain. And so I guess my honeymoon was taking my little brother-in-law, me and my wife, all through Hickory, delivering newspapers that night. And that was our honeymoon, I guess you would call it.
Do you remember how you felt on your wedding day?
Scared. I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. I had took a wife. I barely had turned 17 years old. I didn't think about all this, the responsibility, but I was in love, I just wanted to get married. And so now I guess I was kind of scared.
What kind of jobs have you had?
Well, let's see. The first job I had, I worked at a service station. And that was when I was about 14 years old, somewhere thereabouts. The next job I had, besides working on a farm, I worked on a farm all my life until I got married. The next job I had, I was a curb hop at the Kentwood Grill. I moved from that up to a cook. I went from being a curb hop and a cook to work in the furniture factories. I done that off and on many years. In between that, I owned 2 different service stations. I owned a body shop one time. I owned a couple of furniture stores, furniture business one time. I owned a tanning salon one time, and wound up back in the furniture factory. And then when the shops shut down and all that, laid off, I went to school and started driving a tractor trailer.
What was your favorite job?
My favorite job, best job I ever had, I guess the easiest job I ever had was a supervisor of Crown Heritage Furniture down here in Joyston. I guess you'd call it Joyston or Whitnall. That was the easiest job, making good money I've ever had.
How much did you make?
How much did I make? Down there, well, put it this way, I made top pay for that position.
Which job was your favorite?
The favorite job I ever had is what I'm doing now, driving a truck. My own truck, my own boss. Go when I want to, work when I want to. That's the best job I believe I've ever had, most relaxing, the least aggravating job that I've ever had.
What was your dream job?
Well, my dream job, I guess, would have been my profession. And my dream job when I was growing up, what I always put down in school, my ambition, what I wanted to do or thought I wanted to do back then, was this. I wanted to be a professional boxer. That was one. I got a good start in that, but I got my nose all busted up and I couldn't do that. And my next dream job, see, my nose is crooked, and that's a long story there. And it wasn't done with a fist, it was done with a baseball bat. Being a fist, I could have defended myself, but that baseball bat was harder than my nose, so therefore my nose got messed up, and it messed up my breathing, so I can't breathe good through my nose. So that messed up the boxing thing. And then my next thing that we got started in was a race car driver. We started out, we built race cars, and about the time I got old enough to start driving a race car, my cousin got killed in a car accident. And when he done that, we decided that back then it was too dangerous and all to drive a race car. Then one of my friends got killed in a race car on top of that, and so we decided, or my uncles and dads and all decided that was too dangerous of a job for us to put us boys in, since one had already got killed and another friend had got killed in just a few years apart, so they were afraid that we might accidentally get killed in a race car. So therefore they sold out all the race cars, and we quit racing on the circle track. Of course, we did drag race some for several years, but that was dangerous too, so we finally quit all the racing. But that was the reason we did not pursue racing.
Is the house you grew up on still there today?
Yes, it is. It's still there today. The house is still livable. It's been remodeled on the inside. It has instead of having wood stoves in every room, it now has gas heat. It has a new type of roof put on the old farmhouse. Believe it or not, it's got hot and cold water in it now. It didn't have when I was growing up. It has indoor plumbing. It has a bathtub. It has sinks and commodes and all that in the old house. And the outside of the old house, except the roof, still appears the same, except instead of having the old wooden pillars holding the house up, it has cinder block being put in and the foundation on the old house. When I was growing up, the dog slept on the house, and now it's sitting on the foundation, but the outside appearance of the house is not changed, and the house is probably, I would say, close to probably 170 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood, 150 to 170 years old, and it still looks the same on the outside appearance, except the inside, the ceilings have been lowered and all of that, but the house is still almost the same.
Has the area around where you grew up changed?
The area around where I grew up was all farmland, and today the only thing has changed on the place where I grew up. They widened the road, they straightened out a couple curves, and they paved the road. And there's only, there's only 5 houses in that 2-mile length of that road to this very day. And the reason it's not been developed is because my uncles and aunts owned the land, and they have never sold the land, so therefore the farms and all are still intact, just like they were when I was growing up, except they built new brick houses and stuff on some of the land. Other than that, the land is still the same.
What major historical events do you remember?
Well, I guess the desegregation of schools, when that happened. I remember the day when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I was in the 4th grade of school when that took place, and the whole state, the government, everything was in shock. They closed down all the furniture factories. They let all the schools off from school, and really the people were scared. The moms and dads were scared. I mean, the president of the United States is being killed. They were afraid that somebody might come in and do something to our country.